Little shop of horrors, little shop of terrors.
Hello. So here on Hippie in the City, we have Michael C. Bryan, who is definitely a hippie. He is an actor. He is a writer. He is a mentor, a guide in the metaphysical realm, the spiritual realm, all kinds of emotions. He is feel good, and he is one of my dear friends. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Michael and I met 4 years ago.
Oh, I get to tell the story. So I was in the shower today, and I was thinking about how to tell this. So I have to tell. I
just got excited because
yeah.
I did like a Molly Shannon like.
Ready?
Yeah.
Sniff him.
Okay.
Superstar. So the story about how we met, I was thinking about it in the shower today. So this is very serendipitous today. So not only was it 4 years ago that we met, right? But it was exactly 30 years ago that I moved to New York in an apartment right across the street from where we're at right now. So we're on Broadway between 11th and 12th, and we're at 815 Broadway. And I actually moved into 812 Broadway with a crazy woman. What else is new? So it's a wonderful full circle thing happening here.
I manifested you here.
Of course you did, honey. So okay, I'm going to speak about her as if she's not here, so you really get the scoop on her. So I'm going to give you the real inside detail about her. So she's from another place. We met at a different time. You don't know how gifted Ellen is. Like, she really has something to her that a lot of people don't have, which is her understanding that she's not what you see. She's more than what you see. And she's always been like that. So we were at a acting seminar in New York City with my dear friend Mark Isaacman, who is the executive director of One on One, which is a great...
We love One on One.
We love One on One, L.A., New York. A really beautiful place where actors get to come and create and meet and, help each other, support each other, have a community.
Industry meets actors.
What a nice... She got the branding in there. Notice the effective branding. Really, Mark, sponsor, hashtag sponsor, hashtag I love you, hashtag great head, nice and shiny. He has a nice shiny head. You want to buff it whenever you meet him. So we're in this seminar, right? And we've got our sides, we're all prepared. And so everybody's filled in, and there's a seat next to me that's empty. And everybody's ready and all, we're actorly ready to audition. And so right before we're supposed to go up, in comes this force of nature. It was like, Elle was like, wah! And she sits down and she takes this leg that's like 10 states long and goes, whomp! And it's like this stem, and I keep thinking about, in, what was it, Clueless, when he goes, nice stems. And I thought, nice stems, right? And then I looked down, and at the bottom of her ankle was this tat. And then she'll tell you in a second what the tat is. And I was nervous beyond measure. I was 51. I had just left working in offices for the first time. I had to return back to acting. I thought, I'm too old. I can't do this. All the
bad actor thoughts.
All that, yep.
Or even further than actor.
That's right.
All the bad human thoughts.
And we'll come around to why we're talking about this and why this is so friggin' serendipitous. So my anxiety and depression had fucked me up for so long that I thought, I'm too old. All these years have passed. I can't really perform at this age. I've got to succeed. I've got to get that TV role, that movie role. I've got to get that deal,
Yep.
Tits up,
Validate.
shoulders back.
Yep.
Right?
Validate.
And so Ellen comes in and she sits down. She's like,
yeah, like a mess, like a whirling dervish.
Whirling dervish. Yeah. And I look at her like, gay guy to straight girl going, help. And she looks at me and she's like, and she's not even looking at me. And I'm like, what is happening? So we start to talk. I tell her I'm anxious. And she says, and I'll never forget this, and she says, anxiety is a superpower. And I was like, oh my God, what'd you just say? And it completely, I'm not kidding you, it completely changed my world. You saying that,
you're already making me cry. It's 3 minutes into this. I was really okay, we'll get to the end of the episode before he makes me emotional.
I have told and attributed that to many, many people, and it has helped numerous people who have thought about taking their lives, people who have thought about giving up. Your awareness about that has given more people a reason to live than you will ever know. There are people right now that are alive because of what you said to me. I'm alive.
Well, I am alive because it was said to me. So it's a beautiful thing to really think about, because when you think about a superpower or a superhero in a movie, right, and they have electricity coming out of their fingertips and fire coming out of their eyes, and they can run up walls and things like that. Well, like,
which I do sometimes with anxiety.
No, right. This is where I'm going. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's got to be painful.
Yeah.
Right. Like, those superheroes make it look easy in the movies, but maybe that's because they have had it for so long. They've trained themselves in a certain way. They have accepted it and trained it. Right. Whereas we have this abundance of energy. That's why you're shaky. You're nervous, you're, sweaty, can't stop talking, people think you're on cocaine, and then sometimes you just sort of like fall on your couch because you can't handle it. You can't deal with it.
That's 20 minutes ago.
Right. Before we got here. We have showered
Outtakes
for
on
the
YouTube.
Right. But it's something that I still try to make sense of,
right,
because it is a gift, and some days it feels like a really heavy burden, and it's very frustrating, and things like that. But in telling you, that's part of my process to continue to pass that information along, helps me to actualize it, because I can know something, back all the way around, and I'm still but I don't get it.
Well, it's the experience of it. It's funny because, and as we've said, I act and I write, but I've also been guiding a lot of people in this work. And as a way to help me understand it. So I've been talking to hundreds of people who suffer from deep depression, anxiety, mental health stuff. And I am not a fan of the word mental illness. It's like, do we need to stigmatize it anymore? Right? So it was funny because I remember years ago with my ex hubby and I, who's a psychiatrist and broke up with me because I talk about my life on stage. Can't imagine what I picked him. My mother with a penis. And she abused me. End of story. #stop. I remember when we saw X-Men. And I remember I had no interest really in superheroes. I like a boy who kind of went to him but kind of didn't. But then in X-Men, what I loved about X-Men was that everybody was an outsider who had these gifts, and that made them stick out, but they didn't realize that it was actually something that helped contributed something to the world. And I was very moved by that because I'd always felt like an outsider that I never fit in. And then I finally realized something. I finally realized I'm never going to fit in.
Sure.
I'm never going to, there's no niche really, it's not egocentric when I say that, but there's no niche for us.
Sure. Yeah.
We're totally like our own niche.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, how do you not deny the energy and the attunement and the awareness that anxiety brings? But how do they focus it in a way where they can find their balance in the moment and then enjoy that beautiful respite that comes after that gorgeous, post-anxiety feeling, right? You know that feeling, right? You run the marathon, which was just yesterday. Yeah. So it's that sort of thing. And when your reframe of that, where did you first hear that reframe?
It was in acting class, actually, in LA at, oh my gosh.
I love
Leslie
her.
Kahn.
You told me about her.
I love her. What's her name? No. It was in Leslie Kahn's class, and it's because I was doing a scene and I was doing it technically perfect. Again, #Virgo. And she was like, "Stop! This is so boring." And I mean, oh my God, you're up on stage, you're already doing it, blah blah blah, and then someone tells you it's shit, and I'm staring at her, trying not to cry, trying not to do 100 things. And she's like, "What are you doing right now? What are you actually doing? Because I'm not watching you live the life of the character." And I said, and it was sort of the first time I think I was really honest, as opposed to saying "Oh, well, I'm trying this," that the character might think.
The actor response.
Yeah, and just kind of bullshitting your way through whatever. Right. I said, "Well, I'm trying not to shake because I'm very fidgety, and I move my hands a lot, and I also make a lot of facial expressions." And somebody once told me that a sign of a bad actor was if they move their eyebrows too much.
Ha!
So I was trying not to move my eyebrows, trying not to move my shaky hands, and
Try not to be you.
she said, well, can you just do it with all that stuff, and we can work on some of the other stuff, because watching you try to not do those things is excruciating and uncomfortable for everyone. She said, so just do it. You know, forget about the character, forget about whatever. Just do it with your eyebrows and your shaky hands. Like that.
It sounds like me. It sounds like me at the when I get a facial now. They do the microcurrent. You know. I'm younger.
So I did it, and she was just like, and everyone in class, you know, was like, oh, like you could feel this like tension out of the room, like
and that's what you did. And that's what you did in
LA
at one-on-one. When I saw you up there, you absolutely were a firecracker of energy that went everywhere, and that's why you were so good. Right.
Which it's a funny thing, because somehow to me, and this is where I'm sort of relearning, is that as a human being, not an actor, but as a human being, when I feel I've conquered that wiry energy, the kind of manic craziness, I want to give myself a gold star. But it's not interesting to watch, to partake.
Because that's not who you are.
Honest.
It's not who you are. It's not who you are. It's sort of like, you know, I talk about people all the time. It's like being. Like, how do you be? Right. So I think that when everybody talks about in these spiritual worlds, you know, like how to be, you know, I'm like certain people like Eckhart Tolle, who I freaking adore. I just want to give him an espresso. I mean, oh my God.
Because of his energy.
And you know,
level.
he says this. This is what he does. He's like, so, you know, when you find out.
And you're just like.
Who you? I'm like, say it! I feel like I'm in Rocky Horror, you know?
Yeah, the tension. The anticipation.
I think there's a reason we came into this life having this kind of energy, having this kind of thing to us, right? I think there's a reason. And the expression of it is, it's not our concern when it will invariably freak people out. It will scare them, it will threaten them, and it will freak them out because, A, we're just too much for them. B, they're not in touch with that thing within them. And 3, I mean, C.
Oh my gosh, you're so me. This is literally my family makes so much fun of me. Like, I'm like an A and B and 5 and asterisk. Yeah, oh my gosh. I'm like.
And C.
Yeah.
So that thing where you try to hold that back, you know, it's like I get a lot of auditions for the president or, you know, the CEO. And I'm really the inappropriate, outrageous, crazy CEO. It's like Billy Porter, who said recently he's had this career
like
now.
American Psycho.
That's correct. That's exactly right. And how he was always told, tone it down. He's like, I can't. This is who I am. And he finally found a place that wanted to accept him versus trying to fit into this niche that
I'm still trying to find that in a bigger sense. Like, I'm very comfortable being outrageous with you, with my husband, with my friends, with my family, and I don't know, like there's definitely times that I'm, you know, outrageous in social settings or whatever, but the courage to do it in my art or on a daily basis or all those things,
which is the one place that people want you to do it more than anywhere.
No, and this is one of the reasons I created this space,
right.
Because I was sort of sick and tired of just being able to like see you and grab coffee and talk deeply and then we move along. Like, I wanted to be able to go back and watch it. I wanted other people to hear it because I think there's just a wealth of knowledge there. It's fun.
Why do you think you can't? Can I do something? Can I go for a second here? So why do you think you can't in your art? I've spent years understanding this. What do you think it is? Because I think I know what it is now, and I've spent a long time studying this to get my shit. Yeah. What do you think it is?
Well, it's definitely the approval of others.
Where does that come from? I'm just going to go there for a second. Can I do this for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a lot of fun because this is what I figured out finally. It is a bitch, but it's the thing. So where does that come from? It's the whole thing. I get it now. It's what everyone has been saying.
Sure.
What all these great Indian teachers, philosophers for years I've been studying to get my life together. I finally understand it, and it's a pain, particularly if you have anxiety. This is why what I'm about to say is going to help you. Why do you think it is? Why do you think you care what people think? Do you care what people think? Do you? Because you, by the way, I've experienced you. You are luminescent. That's what I text you. You are extraordinary. You are vibrant. You are unreal. You're a goddess. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're amazing. Whenever I'm around you, I feel like I'm in the presence of pure, beautiful, gorgeous love and light and this extraordinary thing. You're an extraordinary being.
I want everyone that's around me to feel that.
You don't want that. What does?
What? Wait, what do you mean?
I know, right? This is going to be weird. You don't want it. What does? This is it. This is the answer.
I understand your question.
I know. This is so fascinating. So you don't, but what does?
Does what?
Your mind.
Oh, right,
See?
right.
It's your mind.
Not my soul versus my mind.
You're correct. Yes. So
yes, that makes sense to me.
Does that make sense? So
okay, wait. Let's sort of break this down for people that are listening. It's like saying the word "you" can sometimes also be confusing, right? Because it comes.
I appreciate you bringing it on because I've gone so like into this place now.
No, that's where I can live as well, and I just want to educate people as well as getting deep and talking about it. Is that
we're going to teach you about presence and ego and consciousness.
Get your notepads out. Your soul being the most you that you are.
Correct.
Is what you're talking about.
You.
Yes. The you is the soul.
Or as Eckhart calls it, the deep I.
Okay. And then the mind, which is sort of the control center of our bodies.
It's Voldemort and Harry Potter.
Right. Okay. Continue.
Right. So your mind is like Voldemort. Your mind is the nemesis in the story. Your mind is the bad woman, bad guy. Your mind is not your friend. And until you learn to understand that you don't even know that you're listening to your mind, then that's what's causing you from being unable to be present and be who you are. So if you just be, right? So everyone says, just be you. Well, it's not so simple because you don't even know you're listening to the mind, which is contradicting.
Yeah, my mind is telling me that someone will, I don't know, throw tomatoes at me because they hate it.
Right. Or you're worried about people think about you, which is like.
Right. But I understand that where. Yeah. It's the voice in my head. It's my head.
And it's always there. It's about whether or not you're listening to it.
Now, when you're talking to people or doing this work for yourself, how do you know when to listen to it and when not to listen to it?
Am I here or am I in my head? Am I here or am I in my head? Am I here or am I in my head? And do I feel that? Do I feel my hands? Do I feel my feet? Do I see the microphone? Am I here or am I in my head? I say that constantly. And I ask myself that repeatedly to condition myself to be either aware in presence or to be lost in my head.
Do you think it's harder, or I should say easier, to get lost in your head now that we have our phones?
Yes, because what it does is our phones fill our minds. So because we're always filling our minds with things, it's actually more active. So when people say mindfulness, I'm not a big fan. I don't think mindfulness is a real thing. I think mindfulness is a deterrent from the point.
Of quieting your mind.
That's correct, yeah. Or more importantly, I think people say quieting, but I think taking your attention off of your mind. Because if you're like us, right?
Right, that's a scary thing to say, quiet the mind, because you're like, how? And
this is worse.
It's like overwhelming.
Right, when I say stop thinking.
We freeze our bodies.
Yeah, because it's kind of like people say, well, that's stupid. How can I got to think. I have to do things. No, you really, really don't. But to get people to understand that there's this thing that you have access to, that when you perform and you've realized that you're not thinking about the copy, but you're just saying the copy and something's flowing and blowing through you, when you start to have
that's when it feels just like, whoa.
That's nirvana. So that's the sweet spot we're always looking for as actors. Singers, and when they're on stage and they're not thinking about, I should unload the dishwasher. It's like when you have an orgasm, you're like,
or think
God,
like,
take out
I'm
the dog.
going to hit this note and we're going to go up the scale and down. Like, it just...
That's why they practice. That's why we practice. That's why we work at these things, so that we can be in non-thought.
Do you think,
And that's why anxiety is so fascinating, because anxiety is the disorder that is perpetuated by the attention to the culmination of thoughts. So you have a thought about a thought about a thought about a thought.
Sick in the head.
That's why anxiety is difficult, because first of all, it's hard to not think.
Right.
Second of all, it's hard not to listen to your thoughts. Third, it's hard not to be aware that you're actually listening to your thoughts. And then
the awareness of listening to your thoughts.
That's it.
That's
the thing.
That's like, I got the aha moment.
Yeah, that's the aha.
That Oprah talks about. It's like being aware.
Yep.
That you're listening to the thoughts in your mind, not just aware that the thoughts are there, aware that you're listening to them.
So then you become what they say in all this work, which is fascinating. You're the observer of the observer.
Right.
You're the witness to the witness. So you detach yourself from your physical experience and you look at yourself in your life. So you see yourself in your life and you see yourself listening to your thoughts. And then there's no question as to why you're doing what you're doing, because you're either listening to your thoughts, which are causing you to react, which are causing you to feel things that you're feeling because of the thoughts, or whether you're being in this, and then the experience of non-thought.
Now I have a question. Another question. questions.
Darling.
Do you find that in practicing these notions of being the observer or the witness, that
witness of the witness,
right? Do you find that it can be a bit dangerous to do that, though? That it might
it's dangerous
make
not
you,
to.
But what about? Well, I understand that part of it. This is just.
By the way, in case you don't know this is the Ellen I know. Ellen is a fiercely intellectual, and when she and I get together, this incredibly ravenous desire to understand things. When she and I get together, we go here. This is always very fun to me because I'm we mind meld. It's very fun. Go ahead.
I do. I love that's truly another reason that I started this. Is I need to know what other people are thinking about.
No, you need to celebrate your intellect. You're so fucking smart. You are so bright. It's just so enjoyable around you, because not only are you, physically.
I brought him on just to get the compliments.
It's true. You know this if you've been listening and watching. This is nothing that the world doesn't know. It's just really enjoyable to bask in your intellect.
So I want to know if, and I'm asking this in curiosity. Do you find, though, that it might lead you to not to be detached from some of the painful things that have happened?
Well, that's really interesting, because what happens is we think to ourselves, okay, so if I don't listen to my thoughts, and my thoughts are putting into context the life that I've lived, so because it's not we're not a robot, so we're always going to some degree, no matter how aware I feel that we are, we're always going to be listening to thoughts. We're always going to be dragging the past into the present, no matter how much we try not to. I do feel, though, there is a great value to understanding the experience, not just this as an idea, but the experience of being present, the experience of living without thought. Because then you realize...
So doing it as a practice versus...
It's a moment.
Because I think people can... The reason I'm asking this is I think that people out there that maybe aren't doing the work with a guide such as Eckhart Tolle or checking in with a therapist or, using you as a mentor, I think the notion of being a witness to the witness could be confusing in, okay, let me shove it down and then not...
Well, that's why you need a teacher. You need a teacher.
Right, that's what I'm...
Yeah.
So that's where I'm getting at for viewers, is I don't want people to think that it's a level of detachment.
It's actually...
Because that's where it can get very, very dangerous, where you're not living the life, you're not feeling your feelings, you're sort of shoving it down and observing. But I think the difference, like you said, is doing it guided, whether...
You should, with a teacher.
With a teacher.
Of some degree.
And then also to have a time and space to process your feelings, because the feelings are very different than the thoughts in your mind.
I don't feel there's a thing to process. What you want to do is live with certain thought processes that help to facilitate this, such as deny nothing, welcome everything, be good with as is, and be good with the fact that you're not good with as is.
Right.
That it's we're all under the illusion of the biggest con job in the universe, which is that everyone would tell me no, I don't expect that once I get that job, once I get the money, once I get the marriage, once I get the dog, once I get the person or the thing or whatever, that outside thing to happen, I'm going to be okay. It's like we're always externalizing everything, and there has to be a time in our lives where we realize that all of that is not working. I work with a lot of people who have a lot of all of that, and they're not happy. They're very depressed, and they're very confused. They stand amidst all these riches and think, why am I not happy? Well, because there is a secret conditional attachment to thinking that those things, believing, knowing, feeling, are gonna soothe that thing inside of us, right? Are gonna bring it. And then the great spiritual awakening that happens for all of us at some point, hopefully, is when we notice that that's what's causing us to suffer. So then we go inward, and if we don't feel that connection, feel that soothing, that inner peace, right? Then our work becomes, why is that? What's blocking that? And what's normally blocking that is the dysfunctional, neurotic, rampage, litany of thoughts that are just echoing within our minds. And the fascinating part is the moment we start to recognize that we've been recognizing our thoughts and living our life in accordance and feeling that, once that happens, then the curious part is the more we move away from our thoughts, the louder the mind gets. So we have to be prepared. It's like a kid on Ritalin.
Yeah.
It just goes on like crazy. Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Would you so when you're talking about the mind, would you also describe that as the ego?
Well, the egoic tendency is always, I find that egoic tendency is always signified by certain things. You know, if
materialism.
Well, more about your persnickety, you're cranky. Nothing is ever quite right. Of course, the big one is you're right, they're wrong. That you have to prove a wrong, like you have to fight a war. That you are offended. That you need to be recognized, you need to be acknowledged. That's all ego.
Right.
So when you start to drop all that, then what do you attach to? Because if all those things are the precursor for success and likes and fame and fortune, all that sort of stuff, which is lovely, if that's not working for anybody, I mean, look at Kate Spade, whose brand was built on happiness and joy, and she hung herself from her Park Avenue apartment. Look at Anthony Bourdain, very open about it, and look what he did. Look at Robin Williams, the funniest guy on the planet. All these people took their lives for a reason, because the externals were nice, but they're an augmentation. They're not the source, right? Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
I talk about it a lot with a lot of people because I struggled with it for a very long time, and I still, of course, am trying to understand it fully. As an experience, not a thought, as an experience.
Yes.
As a feeling.
Yeah.
As an experience.
Yes.
Because everyone babbles about this all the time, Instagram posts, tweets, all these things, but they don't feel it. They just keep saying it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's that thing you sort of like, and I've definitely been there, and then also have times where I kind of tiptoe back into it of like, if I say it enough times, either it will come true or someone else will do it for me. And when you're
what
talking,
does that mean?
Sort of like,
that's interesting.
I'm trying to think of something because I've really gone away from a lot of this thinking, but it's just like being a broken record. You know what I mean? Like whether you're talking about needing more sleep or the fact that you're in a fight, emotionally abusive relationship, and you just can't figure out why this one time, you know what I mean? Whether it's really deep or really more simple, when you become that kind of broken record because you're trying to say it to someone enough times to believe it yourself or to...
Give me an example in your life. As much as you're willing to do on a podcast.
Right. That's what I'm weighing.
I know.
Right now.
I say everything, so that's just me. But I respect boundaries.
I would say, I mean, I wanted to get sober for a long time, and I would talk about it and do the thing a lot of people do, which is, oh, I'm never drinking again. Oh my God. You know, like
after a bender or something?
Yeah. But it was like something I would say or talk about in a sly enough way that maybe no one would figure out I was an alcoholic.
Do you know why that was happening though? I mean, I talked to a lot of people.
Well, I mean, for a while I was just saying it so that maybe someone else could, you know, look me in the eye and see me for what I was, because I didn't want to have to look in the mirror and see that person and see that pain.
Do you know you're not broken?
Yeah, I do now.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
Good. And why did you want to be sober?
Well, because I wanted to get back to my authentic self. I was like very
connection
deep,
to that.
Yeah. I was very disconnected. I was very in the illusion, trying so hard to be something that I wasn't, so that I could
have people like you.
Yeah. I mean, get all the things I thought would make me happy, honestly, because I spent so much time trying to stamp out this anxiety that, you know, when I would, I mean, it started from a young age of just normal, you know, stuff of like, oh, I was dyslexic, so I had to go, you know, to a tutor and a therapist for that, which is just to help, you know, me function in quote unquote normal school, which of course is not at all how I learned, but it made me feel less than, it made me feel other, it made me feel weird, which I already felt anyway. And then we're like exacerbating something. And then, you know, it continued. So all I sort of knew about that anxiety was scrub it out, like get rid of it. You know, you're not good enough. And then of course, being a Virgo, I'm like going to take it to the umpteenth level. So it was like a lot of self-loathing, a lot of I'm not good enough. And so then I definitely was drinking and doing drugs to feel like I had permission to like be my weird, crazy self.
Well, you were it lowers resistance. So the great thing about drugs and alcohol is that you do stop that sort of resistant thought and feeling. And you feel that opening. Yeah.
But then that's how it's the beginning of that is, but then it quickly deteriorates and becomes another illusion. I mean, just another one, you know, because you're not going inside and really doing that work. It went from like, let's scrub it out to like, let's light it on fire. Like, let's do the most crazy, wild, wacky shit because I spent so much time trying to mask it.
It also is a way to mitigate your intensity because you're very intense.
Yeah.
So it was a way for you to not be that.
Well, I didn't have to own it either. I'm like, oh, I was just drunk or wasted. And it's like, well, in fact, now that I'm sober. No, I feel being sober is the best gift I could have ever given myself. And I feel so much freer.
When is it hardest to stay sober?
When is it? Actually, right now, this time of year is the hardest for me. Most people, some people it's all the time, 24/7. A lot of people that I know, it's in the summer when people seem very happy. No, it doesn't bother me at all. It's definitely winter when it gets cold, when it's windy, when there's Christmas parties, when there's...
Because everybody's drinking.
Oh, yeah. I want a bourbon and a fireplace like nobody's business. But it's okay, you know, because the things I have completely outweigh that desire. And
do you hear a thought come in about it? Are you aware of the thought about the bourbon and the fireplace? And then how do you talk to yourself? How do you negotiate? What do you do?
Well, so something I've really started doing is being my own parent. So whenever that desire or voice comes in my head of I want that, I then kind of, it's something I started visualizing with my therapist in terms of, is she a little kid? What does she look like? Is it young Ellen? Is it old Ellen? Is it not Ellen at all? You know, what does this thing look like that wants that destructive behavior and anything else? And it was definitely like a young adult me, but nothing like I actually was as a young adult. She looks like a young adult, but is like a total baby, total child.
This, by the way, is pretty common and deep. It's, you know, in a lot of the work I do with people who have addiction stuff or abuse or mental health stuff, I put them into a meditation, and then I ask them to imagine a circle of some form, either cushions or chairs or whatever, in any space they want. And then I say to them, so we're going to ask to come into this space a younger version of yourself. They can be any age, any gender, any shape. And what you want to do is you want to let them know this is a safe place for them to show up. And then, so like if little Ellen comes in and she's 5 or 6, and it's not adult Ellen that feels frightened or out of control, or that she can't find her balance right now, or that she's going to be okay. It's little Ellen that's frightened. So when you go to little Ellen, and I have people say this, I'm like, so I want you to say to little Ellen, you know, I'm sorry that I've abandoned you, and I'm here for you now, sweetheart. So then you listen to her and you say, what do you need? What do you need, honey?
That's exactly what I do now when I feel those feelings, or when I'm at a party or whatever, and everyone else is drinking and I do have them. Most of the time I've done enough of this work, and I really am very diligent about making it a practice every day.
Outside of the party.
Outside of the party. Sorry. I talk, you know how I do that.
No. I'm just saying that to people who are hearing what we just talked about. That's pretty deep stuff where we went there for a second. And the work about being there for your younger self.
But you can do it. I guess my point in the party, like I was just at a Halloween party with a bunch of friends, my husband, and I did have a moment of like feeling other than the party. And then I just, in a very quick moment, was like,
disassociated from your body, that sort of thing?
Yeah. But then I was able to go like, what do you need? How can I help you? You know, you're good. How are your fears? How are this? And I almost always take a bathroom break. I give myself a mini meditation, and then I come back and I'm just like, I get to be my most authentic, fun self, and not be apologizing about it, and that work. I mean, I've only been sober now for not even 2 years, and so that has been
It's not only. It's
almost
2 years.
2 years.
That's amazing.
And
it's a long time.
It is. But it's like that step in my, like, we met 4 years ago, and that was the beginning, it was like almost, I was just thinking about it. Like when you asked me about certain things that were happening in my life that I might have been repeating like a broken record to try to get someone else to heal, that was really the biggest point in my life when I was like completely falling apart, and the universe sent me you. Like, absolutely. You gave me so much grounded honesty. Some people can really give you honesty and they slap you in the face with it, and it, you know, and you gave me like a safe space, and with a lot of honesty, like, honey, you are being stifled. You have got to pick yourself up from your bootstraps. Like, you have to be your own hero. And you also told me something so valuable about when you are having a really, really terrible day, or when you're feeling absolutely trash and depressed and everything, that you can find a moment within that sadness to get excited that happiness is on its way.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I feel in the pits,
Mm-hmm.
I stop and I go, Michael told me happiness is just around the corner. And it always comes. It never fails. It always comes. And I tell a lot of people that, just like you tell people the superpower thing. I mean, it's like, you're not going to feel shitty forever.
It ends.
It does.
Yeah, we forget sometimes we're in it. That it
Oh,
ends.
you think this is it now? Like,
Yeah.
this is me. And it's
Yeah.
like, we couldn't be more,
Yeah.
as human beings, we couldn't change more. I mean, we change constantly. We're like the river. You cannot step in the same river twice. And yet we push against that notion all the time, right? Like, when you are sad and lonely, you feel alone. You think it's singular. You don't think anyone else feels this way. You think it will last forever. And those just could not be more true. It's your thoughts trying to take advantage of you and stay alive. That sadness is trying to feed itself.
Yeah. And doing this stuff and knowing this stuff and reminding yourself of what you know when you do feel good, when things are well and everything is great, it like shores up this thing so that it gets ahead of you. So you've got this momentum. So when you are in a place where you're in the pits or you feel bad, you know enough to know, even in the worst part of that, because, you know, a lot of the people I talk with are really suffering from depression. No one wants to talk about it because it's depressing. But the thing about depression is, in that feeling, you really can't even think that there's the sun shining beyond the clouds. You just can't think of it. That's why when things are great and things are good, you have to remind yourself that I'm aware of this. I know this. This is who I really
Remember
am.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pack up a little piece of it. Take it for the days that don't feel good.
And you've got to keep that active. Like these things that we talk about, like the stuff with your therapist where you went to the inner kid and all that sort of stuff. This stuff doesn't just happen. You have to work for this. You have to you have to do the work. That's really important. A lot of people don't really think that, oh, if this is my birthright, I should just feel it. No, you have to welcome it in. So you know, I say to people, you know, welcome this in. You have to do the work to be in this place of being present and not listen to your thoughts. But if you don't, it's never gonna. It doesn't have a hold on you.
Yeah,
it just doesn't.
Well, a hold on you. That's a great way to say it, because it really does require action. And it's funny how many people will say, when I talk to people that aren't necessarily doing this work, or they're not interested in it, or
they will be if they suffer enough.
Of course. But I'm sort of meaning when I bring this up, you know, small talk at cocktail hour with my husband.
Yeah.
He's drinking the cocktails, not me. But you know what I'm saying? Like, whenever, you know, because I'll go there real quick with somebody, and when I bring it up, people are like, oh, I wish I had time for that, or I wish, you know, this, that, or the other. And I'm sort of baffled by it, because if you carve out even 15 minutes to start, you can do 15 minutes.
Meditation's a thing. Meditation.
Well, meditation, but even further than meditation, I mean, if you want to just start with a podcast, or, you know, if reading's not your thing, or if you just want to read an article on Medium or anywhere and just sort of begin your practice, and you do just make the effort, then eventually it does get a hold of you, and everything else becomes easier, and you have the time and the space for things. Like, everything doesn't seem so...
Well, you get ahead of it. That's always the key. So I have a couple of resources. But what are the resources you'd recommend for people who are hearing this going, huh, and they want to, like, you know, and they want to figure out, like, what are there any books? Are there any things? Because I recommend, like, probably 6 books that... Well,
the books, you might recommend ones that can ease people in better. I don't know. I'm much more like
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm definitely much more like, personally, I like to just jump in the ocean and see if I can swim.
But as you wisely said, and some people hearing this is so new to them that Zen mind, beginner's mind is always very smart. And because you and I have spent a long time figuring this out, because we've had so much, I was abused, you're sober, because we've had these things to figure out,
grapple with,
we were voracious.
Sure, of
we
course.
had to figure stuff out.
Insatiable.
So that's why I, from a very early start with my dad was a shrink. So he introduced me to a lot of this. But what do you read? Or what do you recommend to people?
Okay, so, I love the 4 Agreements.
Yep, that's great.
I just talked by Don Miguel Ruiz. I talked to my last guest about this as well. That's his favorite book. I love The Alchemist, but I also find
it's fun.
Yeah, I think some people get a little
alchemist.
No, if it's too beginner, they get lost in the story part.
Sure,
they don't.
Sure.
Go there yet. I love The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yep.
That one also can be a little bit
heady
if you're new. I love listening to Super Soul Sundays by Oprah.
Of course, it's great.
I think that's great. I also think it's extremely approachable in terms of she really clarifies things for people. There's a book that I love to talk about right now called The Instruction by Ainsley MacLeod.
I don't know this.
He's a psychic medium, and it is all about your soul's age. So your soul...
Mine's 4,500 years old.
No, you know how many people say that it's like this many, but here's where he clarifies that it can be a little confusing. Your soul as a thing is 1 through 10. But to get from 2 to 3, 4 to 5, it might take you many lifetimes. So we're definitely old souls. I can't tell you exactly what soul's age you are because I've just begun some of this work. And he communicates with his spirit guides and everything to get that information. But I love that one because he's written it in a way that is very almost textbook, very practical and straightforward. And I really appreciate when metaphysical people that have this sort of download.
That's the timer.
Back it up. So I really love when people that have some of these gifts or are attuned to getting the download of information from the spirit world, that they write it in a way that is very practical for people.
Sure. I'm all about practicality.
Yeah, I mean, I just love something that I kind of just love that point A to point B, especially because I think it's a really good way for people to soak it up and then they can keep digging. And Celestine Prophecy. I love that one too. That's another one that's got the fiction story, but takes you through the
which
insight.
Is great.
Yeah, kind of like The Alchemist. Yeah. So give me your books.
Well, Gary Zukav, I was introduced to as a kid. So Gary Zukav, Zukav, he wrote The Dancing Woolly Masters in 1980, which was this amazing quantum physics. It was how quantum physics was. Yeah, it was great.
Talk dirty to me.
Yeah. Darling, I'll talk about quantum physics to you. What is it? EDM? What is that? Is that it?
Oh,
EDM? What is
it?
EDM. You know, where you say it.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's 4 letters though. It's like ESFL or something.
EDMS. Spirituality.
Really low and deep.
So he wrote that in 1980. It was a huge hit. My dad gave that book to me, and he said to me, he goes, "This is the future. This is how things work." And so I read it and loved it. Didn't get it, but I loved it. But it was very popular. Then
really quick, I want to pause you and say, I like that you said I didn't get it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Also, if you don't get any of this, but you love it, that's okay. You can just continue to
look for
listen,
the spark. Look for
learn.
the spark.
Yeah. Just keep.
Because instinct and intuition is really not what most people base their decisions upon. Great leaders I found, I had this, and I'll tell you what the other 4 are, which are great books. This woman who was the head of this major financial firm was a client of mine, and she had to pick a new SVP for her company. And so HR had this senior vice president.
Oh, okay.
So she had to pick up this. She had this huge stack of CVs, resumes, that HR had spent an incredible amount of time poring over, meeting people, what have you. And she pulled me into this gorgeous penthouse apartment, and she said to me, she's like, I don't know which one to choose. And I said, okay, so you know what I'm going to say? And she's like, I hate you. And I'm like, yeah. So you've got data, you've got PowerPoint spreadsheets, you've got enough meetings to float a tanker. You know what the information is, but I'm going to ask you, what does your gut say? And she looked at me and she said, that's how I've run my whole business life and I've been successful. And I said, yes. So you have to know that is the guidance, right? So she chose the person that she felt was right, which was a person that didn't have nearly as many Ivy League qualifications, but ended up, of course, knocking it out of the park. So
I'm such a believer in the gut feeling. I mean, that is like my whole
So
existence.
What is gut feeling?
Well, we definitely talk about it, saying gut feeling, meaning it's only in your gut. And
Intuition.
I don't believe that for everyone. I think some people can say like, oh, I don't have
solar plexus sometimes.
Sure. I think it's wherever your personal DNA map, human body has its energy sources.
You could also wonder, it's interesting that the stomach and the heart is where we feel these knowing places, right? So I find that interesting.
Well, and some people, I'm learning a little bit about human design, which I don't know very much about, but my friend Maura is doing this practice, and she just did mine, and it's sort of like mapping out your chakras and some birth chart. I mean, it takes many metaphysical sciences and puts them together. And it's interesting because some people, their quote unquote gut feeling might be in their throat. They might have sort of a tightness or a dry throat, or even in your kidneys, you might have like lower back pain which is very interesting.
That's common.
Yeah. And she was saying that, but people will just bypass it as sort of like, oh, I have chronic, of course, some people definitely have chronic bronchitis. I'm not saying that medical illnesses, aren't real, but she was explaining that once you kind of can map out your own personal, where your chakras are the most vibrant and where you have tendencies to get the energy blocks, that, if you get an energy block in your sacral chakra, then you have to constantly work to unblock it, things like that. And she, for me, my gut feeling is truly in my gut. I mean, I get like totally wonky if I feel something is off or not right. And when I ignore it, it's almost like that pesky child that won't stop talking.
That's the thing about anxiety too, and depression, all those things. You're emotionally very acute. You feel things very deeply, so you're very aware of things. But sometimes you don't know if that awareness is based upon what you're receiving or downloading, as we always say, or if that's from the mind.
Right. Sometimes you don't know where to place it, so you're like, I'll just ignore it and look at the resumes with the best.
That's a discernment.
Qualifications, and you're like, wait a minute.
That's right. Is this ego? Is this essence? Is this me? Is this, because we're vessels. So something's trying to be expressed through us. We're not trying to express it. It's something to be expressed through us.
And living in New York City is hard. It's like downloading too much.
Yeah, you have to sometimes, I always say shields up, that works. So Zukov. So he wrote a book 25 years ago that Oprah discovered. And
gosh, love her.
Yeah, I love her. She really likes to figure stuff out. She really wants to understand this for her life, and she's been through so much, you can tell. So it's called Seat of the Soul.
Seed of the Soul.
Seat of the Soul. And 25 years ago, an edition came out, and the 25th anniversary edition that came out has an extraordinary study guide in the back. And everybody,
I love a study guide.
Oh, you'd love this, because the everybody I give it to sort of loses their mind, because he talks about a 5-sensory and a multi-sensory person, and how the 5-sensory personality versus a multi-sensory, how we're supposed to live. It's an extraordinary book. There's that, and then the one that people tend to lose their mind about because it's short and it's sweet and it's really good is An Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Everyone. Okay. Well, I have to go buy it right after. No, this is like the 7th time in 2 weeks that someone's told me to read this.
Yeah, you should read it. His other book wasn't so great, but this one, he tapped into something. And it's the same thing that I feel that Eckhart, I like Power Now, but nothing like A New Earth. Mm-hmm. So A New Earth, there's something in A New Earth. It's got this thing in there. It really does have some juice in there. Yeah. So I like A New Earth more than I like that one. And then the couple other ones, it's a trip, but it's called I Am That. It's this Indian text. Mm-hmm. I can't pronounce the dude's name. It's like 20,000 syllables, and it's an amazing like oracle almost book where you open it up and you can't believe what you're reading. And then the last one is Oneness by Rasha, which is it's gonna be.
We need to start a metaphysical book club.
Yeah, I know a lot of them.
Let's do it.
We should do it. Yeah, and people would we should read from it, because when people read Oneness and they open it up with a question, right? Mm-hmm. They will see the answer, but they don't know what they're reading because it's so thick.
Yeah.
But now, of course, I've been reading it for so long because it's about, you talk about frequency, vibration. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, shut up. What? How's it going to help me in my career? I tell business people.
Isn't that the thing? I mean.
They hate it. They hate that talk.
Everyone here is just like.
They hate it.
But that's why I'm doing more of it. But
yeah.
It honestly, it's like if you could just tell someone like, hang on, if you do this energy work, this tapping into your source, this everything, like the business will just be booming, and it won't.
But until they experience it, and they don't care. It's like okay, it's to raise my frequency, tap into my source.
You're like, so the word business would just be so trivial if you just did
here's
all
some
this.
Kush, go have a little smoke fest, and enjoy yourself. It's hard to explain to people that this is.
Yeah, you just sound like hokey, silly.
Yeah, you do. They don't
that's
believe
why
it's true.
Hippie in the city. In the city is just as important as the hippie part, because. And I've said this many times, like I am drawn to New York, to LA, to Chicago. I love big cities. I love urban life. I love all the cultures of people that have come together. I think it's fascinating. It's amazing that we live on top of each other and like ants, and we manage to make it through, and we learn so much about ourselves. So as much as I have this fantasy about like running through a field naked and having like, a commune.
You still can at Central Park.
The
Probably
crazy
trend.
lady is running through. I'm like, Michael told me to live out loud.
She has Hippie in the city tattooed on her ass. What's that about? Is that a new show?
Oh my God, talk about branding.
It's not bad, huh?
Literal
yeah.
branding. But yeah, the city part is just as important as the hippie part of this podcast for me, because I think going off and having a hippie commune somewhere sounds great, and maybe I'll do that when I'm 70. But I think it's much more important to put it out there and create this kind of energy, because it does create an energy that I can give off as much light and brightness and intensity and everything that you mentioned. But when we do it together and we release it, it's like we've taken our anxiety, we've trained it into this thing that you and I have, and we're going to give it to someone else, and hopefully people won't feel so weird or alone. And I think that work, anyone that's doing it, is so important. It's more important now than I think maybe it ever has been, because of the internet, digital, social media. There's so many good avenues to connect, make money, stay in touch. But it exacerbates the mind. It makes your anxiety, depression. So I think if we can create content that people can consume that's good.
But it can't just be that. It's got to be so if anybody
who's the work once you set the phone down.
Well, they have to be discerning. They have to curate their life. So I say to people, you have to curate what you look at. You have got to own that. Yeah, you need to own it.
Yeah.
So you need to own. When I tell people, when you go to the movies, literally look away from the screen every 15 minutes, because you don't want to be lost in the illusion of that, right? And you want to be in presence. And everybody thinks they want to get away, which is why we drink and do drugs, is because we think that this life is too difficult to accept and we want something different.
Sure.
When accepting that what is the point,
Right.
That's so when
Ladies
you're not in what is.
That's the point. Accepting what is.
Resist nothing.
Change
Welcome
your perspective.
everything.
That's the only thing.
Yeah, you got to welcome it, and you got to work for it. You got to, and this awakening that we're talking about, the thing that we're, that this is about, and about how to. I always say this, but this is a great idea, an old Indian idea again, and I think it's part of Taoism, which is be in the world but not of the world. So you want to be in it, because that's how you learn things. That's how you test things out, right? But you're not of the world, which means you're not constantly reacting when something pisses you off, posting something, making a comment, reacting. So you're not like I call the flinch sort of thing. We're not flinching all the time. And then we blame this person. Well, no matter what that person is doing, no matter what is happening, it's like this idea about no labels. Like it's not a crappy day out. It's just raining.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, it's so crappy out. No, it's just raining. And you say that to someone, and they're like, you're an idiot.
But
it's crappy
the world
out.
is thirsty and it needs some water. Like
it's just
that's it.
rain.
Yeah.
But that sort of awareness that we label things, that we have mind constructs that are overlaid over things, and that we have an emotional response to that. If this is really about emotion, and since depression and anxiety and mental health stuff is always about, I feel like the emotions are in control of me. I'm not in control of the emotions.
Yes.
When you learn to get in control of the emotions, then through the different methods like externalizing your experience, taking smell, taste, touch. What do you smell, taste, touch? Being the witness to the witness, doing the deeper inner child work. When all that sort of stuff is what you start to make part of your conscious process to instigate a presence and an awareness. Am I here? Am I in my mind? Once that starts to happen, then once you can even talk like this,
right,
you can't go back.
Yes,
you literally can't go back, because then you start to realize, oh, I've been friggin' asleep for so long. Yeah, and that's the point, to wake up. Yeah.
Wake up, ladies and gents.